I was 53 when it started, not a midlife crisis, not loneliness, not even boredom. It was curiosity, a slow, warm pull that started in my chest and ended somewhere much deeper. My name is Diane, married for almost 28 years to Mark, a good man, dependable, methodical, and a little too predictable. Our kids were grown, our home was quiet, too quiet sometimes. We had routines instead of surprises, security instead of passion, warmth but not heat. It happened during that long summer, the one where Mark's half-brother, Jason, came to stay. Jason was 42, not much younger than me. He and Mark shared a father, but nothing else. Where Mark was corporate and clean, Jason was earthy, the kind of man who could fix a car engine, gut a fish, or charm a room with a crooked smile and a whiskey voice. He'd been living out west, Montana, maybe, working on God knows what, land surveying, he said, or maybe construction. I can't remember. All I recall is the heat of the day he arrived, the hum of cicadas in the air, and the way he stood in the doorway like he owned the sunlight behind him. "Hey, Diane," he said, taking off his sunglasses. His eyes were green. No, hazel, but sharp. You look good." I laughed, brushing off the compliment, but it clung to me like summer sweat. The plan was simple. He'd stay for 3 weeks while he sorted some business in the area. Our guest room was free. He offered to cook sometimes, maybe fix the squeaky porch step. Mark liked the idea of having him around, said it would be good to reconnect, and it was good, at first. Jason had a way of making everything feel a little more alive. He whistled while he made coffee. He teased me when I corrected his grammar, calling me Miss Proper in a way that was more flirtation than insult. He told stories about wild places and rough jobs, laughing with his whole body. I started lingering in the kitchen longer when he was there. I wore that old cotton dress, the one I knew clung a little too close to my hips, and pretended not to notice when he looked at me just a second too long. I told myself it was harmless. The first time something really happened was small, a flicker. It was late. Mark had gone to bed early, complaining about his back. I was in the den, sipping a glass of wine and rereading a paperback I'd started years ago, but never finished. Jason walked in wearing nothing but sweatpants and a damp towel around his neck. His chest was bare, lean but muscular, not like a gym body, more like someone who actually used his muscles for work. He smelled faintly of soap and sun. He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't expect you up." "Didn't expect you to be half naked in my living room?" He laughed. "Well, guess we're both full of surprises." He sat across from me, legs spread wide, casual, confident. I tried to keep reading, but the words slid off the page like water ... "I always liked women who read," he said after a pause. "Smart. Still, that's rare." "Still?" He tilted his head. "You don't fidget. You don't fill silence with noise. You just exist. Gracefully. That's something." My cheeks warmed. I looked down. "You always talk like that to married women?" "No," he said. "Just the interesting ones." That night, I dreamt about him. Not sex, not really, but something worse. The dream was intimate. He stood behind me at the kitchen sink, his hands brushing mine as we washed dishes. He whispered something I couldn't hear. I woke up aching and angry at myself ... The days got warmer. Jason spent most afternoons out, working or pretending to. I found myself waiting for the sound of his boots on the porch, the jingle of his keys. I watched him from the window once, shirtless, sawing a piece of wood for a new porch bench. His skin glistened. He whistled a tune I couldn't place. I stood there for a long time. One night, Mark was away, business trip to Chicago. Jason cooked dinner, grilled salmon, roasted potatoes, and that creamy dill sauce I once told him I loved. We ate on the patio with a bottle of white wine and candles he lit without asking. You're different when he's gone, Jason said. How so? Less careful? Like you breathe deeper. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Later, I stood up to clear the plates, and he reached across the table, placing a hand lightly on my wrist. Leave them. His hand was warm, rough. He didn't let go. I don't think I started. I do, he said softly. And then he kissed me, slowly, as if he were asking a question. I didn't stop him. His mouth tasted like wine and fire. His hand slid up my back, fingers tracing my spine like he was reading Braille. My breath caught. I pulled away, heart pounding. This is wrong, I whispered. Maybe, he said. But tell me it doesn't feel real. I couldn't. We didn't go further that night. I went to bed shaking. I could still feel his lips the next morning, phantom heat blooming on my skin. The days blurred after that. We avoided being alone, and when we were, the air snapped with tension. Once, he brushed past me in the hallway, and his hand grazed my lower back, just barely, but I felt it for hours. I started to hate how easily he could undo me. One afternoon, I came home from errands to find him in the kitchen, shirtless again, fixing the sink. Leaking, he said with a smirk. Thought I'd save you the trouble. You're always fixing things, I said, leaning against the doorway. He straightened up, eyes locking with mine. Not everything's so easy to fix. And then he stepped close, very close. I could smell the sweat, clean and sharp. I dreamt about you, he said quietly. I swallowed. Don't. I wake up hard, he continued, thinking about how you looked that first night, that dress, your laugh. The way you said my name. Jason, no, I shouldn't. You're married. You've got a life, but damn it, Diane. You feel like the part I've been missing. He touched my face then, gently, reverently. My hands found his shoulders almost without permission. We kissed again. Deeper this time, longer. And when he lifted me onto the counter, I didn't protest. That afternoon changed everything. After it happened, after I let him take me on the kitchen counter like we were starving for each other, the house fell into a strange, breathless silence. The kind of quiet you hear just after thunder, before the rain catches up. I stayed in the shower for what felt like an hour, water too hot, skin pink and raw. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood there, letting the memory replay in every breath. Jason had been quiet afterward, not cold, not distant, just still. He helped me down from the counter like I was breakable, kissed my shoulder once, and said nothing. He didn't ask for more, didn't press. He just touched my cheek gently and left the room. I stood in that kitchen alone afterward, skirt wrinkled, thighs still trembling, staring at the dishes we never cleared from the table. The salmon was half-eaten, the wine untouched. The candles had gone out. I didn't know what to expect the next morning. Regret, guilt, an empty chair at the breakfast table. But when I came downstairs, there he was, calm as ever, flipping pancakes and humming. Morning, he said without turning. Morning, I answered, unsure if I was supposed to pretend nothing had happened. He poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one with the chip on the handle, and handed it to me with a smile that was just a little too knowing. I sat down. We ate in silence. Mark called later that afternoon, checking in from Chicago. He told me his meetings were going well, asked how things were back home. I lied through my teeth, told him everything was fine. Better than fine, actually. Jason was a big help around the house. I hated how easy it was to lie. For the next few days, nothing happened. No touches, no kisses. Just long glances, long silences, and the occasional brush of fingers when we both reached for the same dish. And yet something had shifted. It was in the way I dressed, blouses unbuttoned just one more notch, lipstick applied even if I wasn't leaving the house. It was in how he watched me, like he already knew every inch of me and wanted to relearn it from memory. One night, I passed by the guest room on my way to bed. The door was cracked just enough to let light spill into the hallway. I paused, my heart thudded. I heard music playing low, something bluesy, a woman's voice, slow and honey-thick. "Jason?" I said softly. His voice came back low and unhurried. "Yeah." I opened the door a little more. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless again, this time in jeans, barefoot, leaning over a book I couldn't see. The lamp cast soft shadows across his chest. "I couldn't sleep," I said before I had a chance to lie. "Me neither." We looked at each other for a moment too long. Then he said, "Come in." That second time was nothing like the first. No urgency. No chaos. He kissed me slowly, almost lazily, as if he had all the time in the world, as if he wanted to memorize me. He took his time undressing me, every button, every clasp. He asked me if I was sure. I nodded, unable to form words. His hands were calloused, but his touch was delicate, reverent, as if he couldn't believe I was letting him do this, as if he wasn't sure he deserved it. And maybe he didn't. Maybe I didn't either. But in that moment, it didn't matter. The room smelled like sandalwood and sweat. The sheets were cool. His breath on my neck made me shiver. And when he moved inside me, I forgot every rule I'd ever followed. After we lay tangled in silence, my head on his shoulder, his hand drawing lazy circles on my hip. "I shouldn't want this," I whispered into the dark. "I know," he replied, "but you do." I nodded. The days that followed blurred like watercolor in rain. I cooked breakfast like nothing had happened. Mark would call. I'd answer. Jason would be in the garage, fixing something. I'd hear his radio playing some old Springsteen track, and my stomach would twist. One afternoon, I watched him from the upstairs window while he worked on the porch swing. Shirt off again, skin bronzed, a light sheen of sweat across his back. I should have felt shame, but I didn't, not yet. Instead, I felt something terrifying and electric. I wanted him again, not just physically. I missed how he made me feel, desired, undone, like I was still alive in ways I hadn't been for years. That night, he knocked softly on my door. "Not tonight," I said. "Okay," he replied. No anger, just understanding. And then, after a pause, "Can I sit with you a while?" He did. We didn't touch, we didn't kiss. We just lay side by side on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling. He told me about his childhood, about moving between houses, always being the half-son, the visitor. About how he used to sleep in basements, garages, guest rooms. How he never unpacked fully. I told him about the first time I met Mark, about the soft way he used to look at me, and how that look had faded without me noticing. "Do you love him?" Jason asked finally. "I do," I said. "Just not the same way anymore." He was quiet for a long time after that. Then he said, "I won't ask you to choose." I turned to him. "Why not?" "Because I know how that ends, and I'm not interested in winning. I'm just glad you let me in." I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay there listening to the soft sound of his breathing, trying to decide if I was falling into something or just floating toward escape. The next morning, Mark came home. He kissed my cheek, set down his suitcase, and asked what we'd missed while he was gone. "Nothing," I said. "Quiet week." Jason emerged from the garage, shaking his brother's hand with a grin, like everything was just as it had been. But it wasn't, and I knew, even then, we were far past the point of pretending. Mark's return changed everything, but only on the surface. He brought with him the smell of travel, dry cleaning, hotel soap, airport coffee. He dropped his suitcase by the stairs and asked what we'd been up to. I told him the porch swing was almost finished, that Jason had been a great help. I smiled when I said it, and hated myself for how naturally the lie fell out. Jason, he was impeccable. Friendly, respectful, even warm. He sat across from Mark at dinner, complimented the roast chicken I'd made, and listened attentively to his stories about the trade show and this new logistics platform that would revolutionize the industry. Jason nodded in all the right places. I watched him from the side, wondering how he could wear a mask so easily and why it made me want him even more. The hardest part wasn't the lies, it was the quiet. I missed the electricity between us, the wordless glances, the stolen brushes of skin, the way he used to undress me with his eyes even when he was holding a wrench. Now we were just two actors in a play, mouthing old lines on a stage we no longer believed in. And then came the night I almost told the truth. We were sitting in the backyard, all three of us. The porch light buzzed faintly above. Mark had a beer, Jason a whiskey, and I nursed a glass of red wine. The summer heat had settled into our skin. Crickets hummed lazily. "I forgot how quiet it is out here," Mark said. "At night, I mean." Jason leaned back in his chair. "That's what I like about it. City noise gets in your bones after a while." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat was dry. I watched the fireflies blinking in the dark and wondered what would happen if I simply said it. "I slept with your brother in your kitchen, in your guest room, more than once." But instead, I said, "Want more wine?" I walked into the house and never came back out. Later that night, I sat on the floor of the bathroom, door locked, and cried for the first time in weeks. Not from guilt. Not really, but from exhaustion. The weight of pretending, of compartmentalizing, of walking around with two lives pressed against each other like glass plates, one slip, and everything would shatter. The next morning, Jason found me in the garden, pulling weeds with more force than necessary. "You okay?" he asked gently. I didn't look at him. "No." He crouched beside me, his hand brushing mine just once. I flinched. "We can stop," he said. "Say the word. We end this." I finally looked up. His face was different in the daylight, softer, older somehow. There were lines around his eyes I hadn't noticed before. He looked tired, too. "I don't want to stop," I said. "I just don't know how to keep going." That day, we didn't touch, didn't speak much. But that night, after Mark went to bed, I found Jason on the porch swing he'd finally finished. The air was thick with jasmine and heat. He didn't say anything when I sat beside him. He just reached for my hand, and I let him. We sat there for hours, fingers laced like teenagers hiding from the world. The intimacy was almost unbearable in its quiet. The days that followed became a pattern of restraint and surrender. We didn't risk the house anymore. Too dangerous. Too reckless. Instead, there were moments, hidden, stolen, sacred. A pressed palm in the pantry. A whispered sentence passed like contraband at the bottom of the stairs. The smallest things carried weight. The way he said my name. The way I mouthed it later as I passed him in the hallway. And when we did find time alone, real time, it was quieter. Slower. Not just sex, something deeper. Something I hadn't expected to find in a man like him. He listened. He asked me things Mark never had. About my regrets, my dreams. About who I was before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone responsible. I told him things I'd buried years ago. That I used to write poetry. That I once planned to live in Italy. That I hated how I looked when I cried. And that I'd spent the last decade pretending I was fine with less. He didn't fix me. He didn't try. He just saw me. And then suddenly, it was his last week with us, ... He booked a small cabin in Vermont to get away for a while. Said he needed space to think. Maybe a new job. Maybe something else. We both knew what he meant. He asked if I'd come with him, just for a weekend. No pressure, no promises. And for the first time, I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. but the idea rooted itself in me like a splinter. The night before he left, I slipped into the guest room after Mark fell asleep. Jason was awake, bare-chested, waiting. We didn't speak. We made love slowly, like we were trying to memorize every inch of each other, like we knew it might be the last time. Afterward, I lay against him, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. He held me, didn't ask why. He didn't need to. In the morning, he left before dawn. No note, no goodbye. Just his scent on the pillow and a memory pressed into the mattress like a bruise. Mark found me in the kitchen an hour later, making coffee with trembling hands. "You okay?" he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I looked at him for a long time, and then I said, "I think I need to get away. Just for a bit." His face changed, confused, worried. "Why?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. "I don't know. I just need to feel something different for a while." He nodded slowly. "Okay, if that's what you need." He didn't press. That was always his way. Polite distance, comfortable silence, safe love. But that morning, as I packed a small bag with more hesitation than certainty, I realized something. I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and now I had to decide if I was going to keep walking. The cabin in Vermont was smaller than I expected. 2 rooms, a fireplace, no TV, no cell service. Just silence, thick and honest, and the sound of pine trees brushing against the windows when the wind picked up. I drove there alone. 5 hours of winding roads and too much time to think. I hadn't told Mark exactly where I was going, only that I needed a few days to clear my head. He offered to give me space, said he understood. But I don't think he really did. Not fully. The closer I got to the cabin, the more I questioned everything. What was I hoping for? An answer? A decision? Redemption? Jason was already there when I arrived. He opened the door barefoot, flannel shirt wrinkled, hair damp from the shower. He didn't smile right away. Just looked at me, searching maybe, like he wasn't sure if I'd actually show. "You came," he said finally. I did. He stepped aside, let me in. No dramatic kiss. No sweeping embrace. Just this quiet, deep understanding between 2 people who had already crossed every meaningful line. The next 2 days passed like a dream I didn't trust. We made love with the windows open and the fire still crackling. We cooked barefoot, played old records on a battered turntable, talked deeply, carefully, with pauses so long they sometimes said more than the words that followed them, and we laughed. God, we laughed. At how absurd it all was. At the fact that the world was still spinning while we lived outside of it, just for a weekend. But on the 3rd morning, as I stood in the kitchen watching sunlight fall across the wooden floor, I felt it. The edge of it all. The truth pressing against my skin like a bruise. This wasn't a new beginning. It was a beautiful ending. Jason came up behind me, arms wrapping around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder. "Stay," he whispered. And for a long time, I didn't answer, because I wanted to, more than I wanted most things. But the truth was, love isn't always a reason to blow your life apart. Sometimes it's just a moment, a mirror, a reminder. I turned to him, ran my fingers through his hair, kissed him slowly like goodbye. "I can't," I said. He nodded. He didn't beg, didn't argue. That was the thing about Jason. He always knew how not to ruin something by holding it too tightly. "I figured," he said, "but I had to ask. I left just before noon." No drama, no tears. Just the weight of a decision I would carry quietly for the rest of my life. When I got home, Mark was sitting on the porch, reading. He looked up as I stepped out of the car. His eyes searched my face. He stood. "Did you find what you were looking for?" he asked. I walked toward him, sat beside him, took a long breath. "I'm not sure," I said, "but I found something I didn't know I needed." He nodded, looked out at the yard we'd built together over 20 years, the oak tree we planted when our son was born, the garden bed I'd tended like a ritual, the cracked bird bath that Jason had fixed without being asked. Mark didn't ask for details. And I didn't offer them, but that night, when we lay in bed, closer than we had in months, he reached for my hand. And I let him, not because everything was okay, but because sometimes the hardest kind of love is the one that stays.